What's going on, guys? My name is Matt and I am back with a new PC build. This time the price point is $1,000, and for that price you're getting a very powerful system perfect for both gaming and streaming. This video is going to be a full build guide, meaning I'm not only going to be showing you each of the parts and talking about why I picked them, but I'm also going to be showing you how to put everything together step by step and showing you how this system performs in a bunch of games. Now obviously there are a ton of different ways you could have spent this $1,000 budget, but I made sure to go for parts that are high quality, reliable, and that should give you a good gaming experience for years to come. Beyond this PC is super simple to put together, even for first time builders. Now before I get further in the video, I want to take a minute to talk about the sponsor of today's video, MICROCENTER. If you don't know, MICROCENTER is basically the best place to buy PC parts in person, and some of the deals you can find there are insane. For example, right now they're offering $25 off of any Intel or AMD CPU using a coupon that's linked in the description. They also offer a very convenient PC builder tool that lets you part out a system with components that are in stock and ready to be purchased. Finally, if you want to save even more money on your next purchase, you can submit your system to the build showcase and upon approval receive an additional coupon to use on your next purchase. To find a MICROCENTER near you or check out anything else I mentioned, you can find links to all that stuff in the description. Thanks again to MICROCENTER for helping out with this video, and now let's get back to your regularly scheduled content. Like I said before, this $1,000 system is an absolute beast, and I'm going to be showing you how to put it all together, but first let's talk about all the parts going into it. So the first thing I like to pick out is usually the CPU, as this determines a number of other factors with the build, and other than the GPU, this has the biggest impact on gaming performance. Now yes, 7th gen Ryzen and 13th gen Intel CPUs are being released, but everything available right now is pretty high end and just isn't possible to fit into this budget. Because of this, I decided to go for a still very powerful 12th gen Intel CPU in the form of the Core i5-12400. This is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU running on the Intel 7 lithography. It can turbo all the way up to 4.4 GHz, and for a mid-range gaming system like this one, it works amazingly. This is going to give you enough CPU horsepower for gaming, streaming, and even a lot of workstation applications like video editing. At about $190, it's offering a lot of value, including integrated graphics, but if you want to save about $15, you could go for the F version, which is the same exact chip minus the iGPU. In a gaming system like this one, having integrated graphics is not at all necessary, but it can come in handy sometimes for troubleshooting, or for example, if you replace your graphics card for whatever reason, you can still use your system while you wait for the new one to come in. All in all, I think the 12400 is a great fit for this build, which you'll be able to see in the benchmark section of the video. One other nice thing about the 12400 is the fact it comes with a pretty decent stock cooler in the box. This is the new stock cooler introduced with the 12th gen CPUs, and compared to the Intel coolers of yesteryear, it's a big step up. Not only does it look a lot nicer, but it has a big copper slug in the middle to help cooling performance. Don't get me wrong, this isn't amazing or anything special, but for a locked i5 like this one, it keeps things relatively cool and quiet, and it comes free in the box, meaning we can save money in this area to use in other parts of the build. If you're worried about temps, those will also be in the benchmark section, and you'll be able to see how well this stock heatsink can cool our i5 in a bunch of different gaming scenarios. Next thing to talk about is the motherboard. After looking at a few different options, I decided to go for what is probably my favorite budget 12th gen board, which is the Gigabyte B660M DS3H. For around $110, you're getting a lot of features and value. This is a micro ATX board with 2 M.2 slots, good PCIe expansion, decent back panel I/O, and 4 DIMM slots supporting inexpensive DDR4 memory. Beyond this, it has a pretty neutral color scheme that should fit well into pretty much any build. The VRMs aren't amazing, but they're fine for a locked i5 and should be good for a locked i7 if you're wanting to upgrade in the future. Overall, I think the B660M DS3H works great in this build. In terms of RAM, I went with the pretty standard affair in the form of this 2x8GB kit of G.Skill Ripjaws 5. This is DDR4 memory running at 3600 MHz, so speeds are decent, and at around $65, the value is also quite good. 16GB should be enough for gaming, streaming, and even 1080p video editing. What's nice is this kit will only take up 2 of the 4 DIMM slots on the motherboard, meaning upgrading in the future to 32GB should be as easy as popping in 2 more 8GB sticks. With that being said, for about $30 more, you could get a 32GB kit, which I'll link in the description if you're interested in having more RAM out of the gate. Moving on to storage, at this price point, I think going for a 1TB SSD makes the most sense. After looking at a few options, I settled on this budget inland QN322 from MICROCENTER, which comes in at only $65. This is a pretty basic drive, but it's a Gen 3 NVMe SSD with 1TB of total capacity and pretty decent read and write speeds. 1TB should be more than enough for your OS, applications, and a good number of games. Beyond this, having it in the ultra compact M.2 form factor means it takes seconds to install. If you don't have a MICROCENTER near you, I'll link another equivalent option in the description. Next up, let's talk about the graphics card. Over the past few months, GPU prices have been dropping like crazy. New stuff from Nvidia has been announced, but pretty much all of those cards cost as much or more than this entire system, so that's not an option. After looking at a few different models, I settled on going with an AMD Radeon RX 6700 XT. This is the MICROCENTER version, which comes in at around $450, but depending on when you look, some 6700 XT models have been going for as low as $390, which any 6700 XT should work fine in this build as long as it's around 320mm or less in length. The 6700 XT works great in both 1080p and 1440p gaming. This MICROCENTER model features a pretty chunky dual fan design with a big heatsink and plenty of copper heat pipes. It has a backplate, 12GB of video memory, and overall I think it looks pretty good too. There are definitely Nvidia options around this price point, but a 6700 XT is going to wipe the floor with them performance-wise. All in all, the combo of the 12400 and this card is one of the best price to performance CPU-GPU combos out right now. In terms of a power supply, the system is estimated to use around 430 watts at most, so we don't need anything crazy, but I still wanted something with 100 or so watts of headroom and a unit that was efficient and reliable. After looking at a few different options, I decided to go with the EVGA600GD. This is a 600 watt 80 plus gold rated unit that's reliable and was pretty affordable at around $60 when I picked it up. Again, 600 watts will be more than enough for this system, and this is a reliable unit that I've used in a number of other builds in the past. It is non-modular, but the cables are all sleek black to keep things looking clean, and any excess cables are easily hidden in the power supply basement of our case. Speaking of the case, what I went with is the Thermaltake V150 TG Breeze ARGB. It was about $70 at the time of purchase, and for that price, it's offering a ton of value. It has a toolless tempered glass side panel, power supply basement, and a full mesh front panel for all of that sweet airflow. It includes 3 ARGB fans, and I think it looks super clean. Building in it was pretty simple, and it had plenty of room for cable management. What's also nice is that it has a built-in RGB fan controller that is easily configured with a button on the top of the case. This is my first time building in this case, but I doubt that it'll be the last. All in all, for $1,000, this is a set of parts that will make up a seriously powerful gaming PC. I'll be talking about performance in a bit, but I first want to show you guys step by step how to put it together. It's very easy and straightforward, and I'll be guiding you through the whole process. All you really need to build this PC is a standard screwdriver, a smaller one for the M.2 drive, and something to tighten down standoffs like a nut driver or a pair of pliers. You're also going to want to have a big open area to work on and block out an afternoon to assemble and set up your PC. So with your parts in hand, workstation clear, and schedule open, it's now time to start assembling your system. The first thing to get out is your motherboard. Open up the box, pull out the board itself, and then under the cardboard pull out the I/O shield. Now you can take the board out of the bag and put the board on top of the box. Grab out your CPU and bring your attention to the center of the motherboard. Push down and out on this metal lever, it will pop up, and just make sure it's fully hinged back. Now lift open the other part of the socket like this to expose the pins. Now take your CPU and line it up in the socket. You can either line the cutouts in the CPU with the cutouts in the socket, or there's this little triangle on the CPU and on the motherboard that you can line up. Either way, once lined up, lower it down, applying no pressure. Once in, you can hinge back over the side of the socket. Press it down lightly, the cover will pop away, then hinge the socket arm back down and under the hook like this. Now it's time to install the cooler. Take the cooler with the cable facing the top of the board and lower it down, lining up the pegs in the cooler with the holes in the motherboard. Once they're lined up and the cooler is lowered down, press them into place in a cross pattern. They should all clip in, and the cooler should be secure enough that you can handle the board by it like this. Once that's done, grab the CPU fan cable and locate the CPU fan header right here. Bring the cable to the header and line up the notch in the connector with the bump out on the header, and once lined up, simply press it into place like this. Finally, to clean the looks up, you can try and bunch up / tuck away the CPU cable like this. Once that's done, it means your CPU and cooler are successfully installed and we can move on to our RAM. We're going to be installing our sticks into slots 2 and 4, which are the gray ones. Start by opening the clips on both ends of these 2 slots, then you can grab your first stick of RAM and line the notch in the stick with the notch in the slot and lower it into place. Once you're sure it's lined up correctly, press down on both sides until the clip snaps shut and the stick is secure in place. Next, just repeat that process for the second stick of RAM, and you'll have successfully installed your memory. Now bring your attention to the M.2 slot directly below the CPU cooler. Take your small screwdriver, loosen the screw, and lift the heatsink away, making sure to peel away this plastic. Bring your M.2 drive to the slot and line the notch in it with the notch in the slot. You can now insert it at an angle like this. Once in, you can hinge it down, reinsert and hinge down the cooler, then reinstall the screw. With that done, we're now ready to put the motherboard to the side and pull out our case. One tip is to pull the box away from the case like this, instead of trying to pull the case out of the box. Once out, you can hinge out the glass, lift straight up, and take it away. Then for the back panel, you can unscrew the top and bottom thumb screws, pull back on the panel, and lift it away. I like to keep these panels in the box and protected by the foam while I build, as it gets them out of the way and keeps them safe. Now you can detach this screw bag that contains all the screws necessary for building this PC. Next, set the case onto its side like this. Before we install our motherboard, we need to do a few things. First is installing standoffs. Grab 2 standoffs from the screw bag that look like this. These are going to go into the 2 holes here and here. I started these by hand. Next, I used my nut driver to tighten them all the way down, but again, pliers would work fine here as well. With that done, take your I/O shield and orient it like this, then lower it down to the I/O cutout and press in each corner one at a time until they snap in and the I/O shield is secure. Now take your motherboard, handling it by the cooler, and lower it in at an angle like this, then hinge it down, lining up the I/O with the I/O shield and making sure you can see the standoffs beneath the motherboard holes. Now from your screw bag, grab out 8 motherboard screws that look like this and install one into each of the motherboard holes with a standoff beneath it. Order doesn't matter, just make sure they're all secure. Now you can lift the case back onto its feet and get out your power supply. Take it with the fan facing down and insert it into the back of the case like this, making sure the holes in the power supply line up with the holes in the case. Now take 4 screws that look like this and install one into each of the holes, securing the power supply into the case. With that done, we can now start routing cables. Start by taking the 8-pin CPU cable that looks like this and push it through this hole in the top right here. Now take the big 24-pin connector that looks like this, along with the blue USB 3 cable that looks like this, and push them through this hole here. Now take the HD audio cable that looks like this and push it through this hole here. Next, take the USB 2 cable that looks like this, the 2 PCIe power cables that look like this, and finally the little front panel connectors that look like this, and push them all through this hole right here. Finally, we need to take one SATA power connector from the power supply and plug it into the fan controller, making sure the pattern is lined up correctly in the connector. With that done, we can set the case onto its side and start plugging things in. At the top left of the case, grab the 8-pin CPU connector and make sure both pieces are pressed together, then line up the notch on the header with the clip on the connector and press it into place, making sure the clip snaps secure over the bump out. Now take your attention to the right side of the board, grab the 24-pin, making sure the 2 pieces are pressed together, then line the bump out and the clip up and press it into place. Now directly below that, grab the USB 3 cable and line out the bump out on the connector with the indent on the header and press it into place. Now we'll plug in all the front panel I/O starting at the bottom left of the board. Grab the HD audio cable and locate the F audio header. Now with the HD audio text facing down, press the connector into place like this. Now to the right of this, take the USB block connector with the text facing up and press it into one of the 2 USB 2 headers right here. Once that's in, bring your attention to the tiny front panel connectors and the F panel header at the bottom right of the board. Start with the power LED ones, and with the positive of the left, insert them into the top left 2 pins here. Directly below those, take the HDD LED connector and press it in again with the positive to the left. Finally, to the right of the power LED, plug in the power switch Orientation doesn't matter. With that done, we're now going to install the final component, the graphics card. Start by unscrewing and lifting up this cover, then unscrew these two covers and lift them away. Now unlock this PCIe lock on the top slot and grab out your card. Line the cutout in the card with the notch in the slot, lower it down and press it into place. You can now take the two PCIe cover screws we just removed and install them here to secure the card in place. Then unscrew, slide down, and resecure this cover. Now you can take your PCIe power cables, making sure the two pieces are pressed together, line them up with the header on the card, and one at a time press them into place. With that done, you can put the PC back onto its feet, and we can do the last thing before reinstalling the panels, which is cable manage the system. I start by pulling all the excess cable length to the back of the case. I push all the loose cables under the power supply basement, then neaten up the cable runs using the included zip ties. I just made sure everything was flat, made sure the main chamber looked good, then reinstalled the glass panel and reinstalled the back panel. We're now ready to turn the PC on for the first time, but there are still a number of other things to do before you can start downloading and enjoying games. The first thing to do is install Windows. I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video, but there are a ton of great guides on YouTube and I'll link some below. Once Windows is done installing, you need to install drivers. The only drivers you really need to download and install manually are the graphics drivers and chipset drivers. Both of these will be linked in the description. Just download, open them up, and hit install. If everything seems good, after installing the drivers, you can shut your PC off. Now turn it on, but as soon as you press the power button, start repeatedly hitting the delete key until you enter into the BIOS. To the left of the screen, you'll see a setting called XMP. Change it from disabled to profile 1, then to save and exit, either hit F10 or select this save and exit button down here. Confirm the changes and the system will restart. At this point, you're now ready to start downloading and enjoying your games. Speaking of games, it's now time to show you the gaming benchmarks. As you can see, the system performs extremely well in both esports and AAA titles. Temps were really good with both the CPU and GPU staying under 70 degrees pretty much the entire time. In terms of streaming performance, I tested streaming Valorant and Cyberpunk to Twitch at 1080p 60 FPS. There was a slight dip in performance while streaming, but overall this provided a great experience on both my end and the stream end, so you should have no problem streaming pretty much any game you want to sites like Twitch. All in all, for $1,000, I think this is one of the best price to performance systems you can currently build. If you would have done something different, let me know what parts you would have went with in the comments below. These build guides are a lot of work, but if you guys keep watching them, then I'll keep making them. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Oh, and as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.